Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, August 18th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. From the White House to the state capitol to concern here at home tonight on the growing cases of monkeypox. The CDC reports more than 14,000 cases in the U.S. and more than 2,600 in California. Our coverage begins with reporter Ivan Rodriguez on plans to get additional vaccines to those who need it the most.
New and aggressive efforts coming from the White House on the fight against monkeypox.
Starting Monday, an additional 1.8 million doses of vaccine will be available to jurisdictions for ordering.
Along with the increased number of vaccine doses, the White House plan also includes expanded access to antiviral treatment, accelerating vaccine allocation, and a plan to have enough vaccine by late September. To make access easier, the government emphasizing high-risk populations.
In the coming weeks and months, HHS is launching a pilot program that will provide up to 50,000 doses from the national stockpile to be made available for Pride and other events that will have high attendance of gay and bisexual men.
For primary care physician Dr. Saju Matthew in Atlanta, the biggest problem is getting vaccines into arms, not a lack of interest.
A lot of my patients are so anxious. Just last week, a group of 5 patients had to travel to Dalton, Georgia, just to get vaccinated because there are not enough vaccines.
Dr. Matthew says although about 95% of those who contract the virus are men having sex with men, it can still be transmitted other ways.
It really is about your social network, who you hang out with, that this can be transmitted from prolonged respiratory exposure to somebody who has monkeypox and skin-to-skin contact.
Officials remind that the vaccine does not provide full immunity until 2 weeks after the second dose. Ivan Rodriguez, KPBS News.
And some of those 1.8 million doses will be delivered to San Diego County. KPBS reporter John Carroll continues our coverage with one medical expert's take on how the county has handled its response to monkeypox so far.
We are working to meet demand wherever we may find it.
White House monkeypox coordinator Bob Fenton talking this morning about the administration's accelerated effort to get vaccine out to where it's most needed. There is certainly demand in San Diego, demand which has so far outstripped supply.
If you don't have the vaccines, there's not much you can do.
Dr. William Sang is the Assistant Chief of Staff at Kaiser Permanente in San Diego. He's also the health system's point person when it comes to vaccines. So far, the health department has distributed vaccines on an appointment-only basis, targeting distribution to gay and bisexual men who are most at risk of getting monkeypox. Both Los Angeles and San Francisco have made vaccines available on a walk-in basis, but not here, not yet. I asked Dr. Sang if he thinks the county is doing all it can to make vaccines available.
San Diego County has done a wonderful job. Our Health and Human Services are doing as much as we can with the supply that we have.
Last week, the FDA approved intradermal injection, where the vaccine is delivered between layers of skin. That has the effect of increasing the available doses up to 5-fold. But people must be trained to do the intradermal injections, and on that note, Singh says San Diego County has done remarkably well.
The entire county was able to move within the course of a week from a whole process of subcutaneous to an intradermal injection. That's amazing for a whole county to be able to move that quickly.
176 cases of monkeypox have been diagnosed in San Diego County, 2,300 across California. The virus causes a rash or sores that can be very painful. Some patients also develop flu-like symptoms. Singh says you should contact your healthcare provider if you think you have it. Testing is available, and so is treatment. He says the county is hoping to get more vaccine by early next week. We asked the health department to make someone available for an interview, but no one got back to us. John Carroll, KPBS News.
The at-home COVID test is an important tool to stop the spread of the virus, but health officials are warning that it may take more than one test to know if you really are COVID-free. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado has more on their recommendations.
It usually goes like this. You were exposed to COVID by a friend, coworker, or family member, and you go home, you take out your handy at-home COVID test, and perfect, you're negative. But are you really negative? Dr. Peter Chin Hong, an infectious disease expert and a professor at UC San Francisco, says maybe not, and here's why.
So if the test is positive, I think you're good to go, meaning that it is a true test result. But if the test is negative, it can mean two things. The first is that you're truly negative, but it may also be that you're positive, but there's a delay in the test telling you you're positive.
He says that has to do with virus and human factors, as well as limitations with the at-home rapid tests. And false negative results often happen with people who are vaccinated and boosted.
The amount of virus to sound the alarm is so small because your immune system is active. It's not enough to turn the home test positive. So that's why you have to wait a little bit longer or repeat the test.
And that is what the FDA recommends. If you've been exposed and are with or without symptoms and test negative, wait 48 hours and test again for at least 3 tests. The FDA says the rapid tests will detect most infections, but if you keep coming up negative and suspect an infection, they recommend calling your doctor and getting a lab or PCR test. That's considered the gold standard. Chin Hong says now that home tests are more common, it's important that those who use them know their limitations.
Because you may be out and about, potentially transmitting it to others if you're only doing one test, it's negative, and you had a real exposure or you have symptoms. Don't just stop with that one negative home test.
Because he says your test results can have serious health implications for those around you.
Your knowledge of the true test result is really crucial if you're living with immune-compromised individuals or people who are not vaccinated, because it may have more serious consequences on them.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
And we learned this week that new booster shots could be available this fall. Coming up, why doctors say you might not want to wait to get one. We're learning more about the healthcare savings included in the recently signed Inflation Reduction Act. Right now, millions of people dealing with conditions such as cancer, MS, and lung disease face thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket prescription drug costs. This new law will implement a $2,000 out-of-pocket cap taking effect in 2025. Insulin copays will also be capped at $35 a month for Medicare recipients. The life-saving drug was used by about 333,000 Californians who received Medicare in 2020.
A Medicaid recipient won't have to ration their doses because they can't afford what the doctor prescribed.
And also covered in this law, Californians will get some relief from inflated health plan premiums, which in turn gives more people access to affordable health care. A small plane crashed into a street in El Cajon, and the pilot was able to walk away from the wreckage. The aircraft went down around 10:30 this morning between 2 bridges separating the eastbound and westbound lanes of I-8 over Greenfield Drive. A Heartland Fire and Rescue spokesman said the plane grazed an SUV when it hit the street. The 65-year-old pilot was the only person injured and was taken to the hospital. The FAA and National Transportation Safety Board are investigating what caused the crash. And many passengers at San Diego International are just now getting back on their flights. A security breach forced the entire evacuation of Terminal 2 East and West. The TSA grounded flights for about 3 hours this afternoon as they searched for someone who walked away from their carry-on bag. Officers and canines conducted a sweep and later cleared the area of any potential security threats. Mexico is promising to invest more than a significant amount of money in the effort to reduce the flow of sewage crossing the border. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has the details.
Mexican and U.S. officials gathered on the edge of the Tijuana River estuary to sign an unprecedented agreement to fix the region's cross-border pollution problem. Mexican officials will spend more than $140 million.
We owe Mexico a lot of credit for stepping up in this really significant way to deal with the problems on its side of the border and to share this responsibility with us because we are one region. And so that's very fundamental today.
U.S. and Mexican officials signed a treaty minute and a memorandum that identifies all the projects that will be funded both in Mexico and in the United States. The U.S. EPA's $630 million comprehensive solution blueprint includes expanding the sewage treatment capacity on the U.S. side of the border, fixing Tijuana's sewage pipes, and repairing a sewage treatment plant south of the Mexican city.
Today's announcement says that we don't have to wait too much longer, that with the commitments that are being made today to the projects and to the funding sources, that we can get this done and open up these beaches for the children of this community on both sides of the border who've been denied the opportunity that is enjoyed by children all across both countries.
The two agreements signed today are a bridge between Mexico and the United States. They're not a solution to the cross-border sewage problem, but a step in the direction toward a solution. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Remote work exploded during the pandemic, allowing many Americans to relocate. A growing number are moving across the border. David Culver spoke with expats now living in Mexico City, as well as locals.
Look past the charming cafes, scenic parks, flashy apartments, and you'll see this capital city for what it's becoming, a refuge for migrants.
I grew up in New York. LA. Atlanta, Georgia.
Perhaps not the border crossing you expected. Americans leaving pricey U.S. cities, heading south to work from home in Mexico City.
It is starting to feel like home. I've been here for several months already.
Born and raised in the U.S., Eric Rodriguez hardly speaks Spanish and admits he's not here to rediscover his Mexican roots so much as to save money.
In San Diego, my apartment was probably $2,500.
For one bedroom?
For studio.
For studio.
Here, I have a one bedroom and I pay $800 a month.
The State Department says 1.6 million U.S. citizens live in Mexico, but they don't say how many are living and working there on tourist visas. The Mexican government does not track that data either, but they recorded more than 5.3 million American tourists flying in during just the first 5 months of this year, nearly a million more than that same period in 2019, pre-pandemic. Rodriguez is among the unrecorded but undeniably present so-called digital nomads, here officially as tourists, most working remotely for U.S. companies, still getting paid in U.S. dollars, allowing for a far more affordable life in Mexico.
I think there was a sense of, we want people to come here to stimulate the economy. Thank you for being here. But I know that recently there's been kind of complaints from locals about the effect that expats living here has had on their own lifestyles.
Sandra Ortiz is one of them.
Los precios más elevados porque saben que es puro extranjero.
The prices are going up high. She said it's difficult because a lot of these foreigners come and they have a bunch of money to be able to spend on some of these apartments and rents.
For more than 50 years, Ortiz and her 4 siblings ran a restaurant popular with locals on a prime corner in the increasingly desirable Roma neighborhood. But as prices climbed, Ortiz says it became unaffordable for the family. And in February, she says they were evicted. All their belongings piled onto the sidewalk.
You had 5 minutes to get everything out and move it out of the business.
So where do the locals go? That's what we need to be asking ourselves, Fernando Bustos Grospe tells me. The pandemic, coupled with global inflation, have made matters worse, leaving locals in fear of a culture clash. This is part of the problem, he says. The expats move here because it's cheap, not because they want to truly immerse in the local culture. Families like the Ortizes feel they're getting pushed out. Sandra and 2 of her siblings now working at another restaurant, no longer the owners. The thought of visiting their old restaurant? Too painful. We went by, renovations already underway. High-end apartments coming soon.
The number of Americans looking for a new place to live remains on a downward trend. Home sales in July dropped, marking the sixth time in as many months that they've fallen. Analysts say higher mortgage rates and overall costs are pushing potential buyers out of the market. And despite that, home prices are still on the rise. Mortgage rates, meanwhile, have fallen slightly. According to Freddie Mac, the 30-year fixed rate averaged 5.1% for the week that ended on Thursday. It was 5.2% the week before. Nearly 30 high school students from City Heights just returned from a scientific adventure in Baja California. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayers says the field trip looks to provide hands-on research and break generational poverty cycles through science.
29 Hoover High School students recently returned from Bahia de Los Angeles in Baja California after working alongside scientists and professors.
We would travel in boats to, for example, some like little islands, and once we got there, we would just get on the water, and kind of make our way to the island, and there we would like study and everything in there.
Sophomore Yairo Chique described one part of the trip.
You get to really see what they do and how it works, You really get to do hands-on work too. I mean, but the simple fact of you being on the water, seeing a whole huge animal, and the experts just, going under there, taking pictures of it and, analyzing it like if it's nothing, it's just crazy.
The Ocean Discovery Institute has been providing hands-on research through similar trips since 2004 for students in City Heights. Carla Camacho was in that first class of students and now works for the organization. She said it opened the doors to opportunities she and her peers otherwise wouldn't have.
Students that went to Baja with me back in 2004, now they're getting their PhDs at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. They're opening their own businesses as environmental biologists. And so it's just really exciting to think that, it takes 15, 20 years to see these transformational experiences, but they really happen.
Students took daily excursions to learn about science topics, such as tracking the local bird population, researching sea turtles and fish, and even swimming with whale sharks, like Chique described. USD professor Perla Myers mentored some of the high schoolers.
And I'm thinking of a time we were sitting on a boat and we were surrounded by hundreds of dolphins and they were jumping all around us, and the eyes of the students were just filled with wonder. They loved it.
Camacho says the Ocean Discovery Institute works with over 6,000 youth a year at schools, camps, and through their leadership program. She told KPBS that 77% of the students connected with her organization have earned science and related degrees. Jacob Ayers, KPBS News.
Well, we will continue to be living on the edge of the monsoon across our region. It will also be more humid than usual, but temperature-wise, seasonably warm for mid to late August. Those dew points are elevated even in our far eastern desert locations. It's not a dry heat. Dew points largely in the low to mid 60s, which is when it starts to feel muggy and uncomfortable outside, and that will continue through the end of this week. Most of the monsoon moisture will be staying just east of us. All these gray and blue colors indicate the shower and thunderstorm clouds. Largely around here, precipitation-wise, it's going to be dry going into the weekend. That monsoon does intensify over the Four Corners into Friday, but aside from some showers and storms potentially clipping far eastern locations, it's largely dry and on the warm side. Overnight tonight, 68 degrees with some patchy clouds out there. Region-wide, close to the coast and in town, it's in the upper 60s, low 60s in Ramona, Borrego Springs 81, 65 in Mount Laguna. During the day tomorrow, a lot of warm sunshine, mid to upper 70s along the coast, 94 in El Cajon and 87 in Escondido, once again with a good deal of sun. Through the weekend, that flood risk remains elevated for extreme eastern California and then into the Four Corners, but I don't think that moisture makes it into the San Diego metro area. 5 days for the coast, lots of sun, it's humid, but temperatures right around 80 degrees, so not overly warm. If you're inland, upper 80s for Friday and then cooling down to the mid 80s with sun and humidity over the weekend. For the mountains, mountains stand the best chance to see a thunderstorm around, and I think the highest threat for that would be Saturday. Temperatures in the 70s, then warming up into the 80s by early next week. Final stop in the deserts, temperatures around or a bit above 100. Also could see a thunderstorm around during the day on Saturday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Ben Reppert.
In just a few weeks, newly updated COVID-19 boosters could be available to help protect against the newest Omicron variants, but there are some questions if that timeline is realistic. Mandy Gaither has more.
It'll be the latest weapon in the war on COVID-19, an updated booster.
These vaccines will become available by early to mid-September.
The new boosters will carry instructions to help the immune system fight off the BA4 and BA5 strains of the coronavirus. Health officials say the upgraded vaccines will be especially important as flu is expected to make a comeback this year.
These are substantial upgrades in our vaccines in terms of their ability to prevent infection, to prevent transmission, certainly to prevent serious illness and death.
Earlier this summer, data on a vaccine to tackle the original Omicron variant was presented to the FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee.
So in other words, it was BA1, not the BA4, BA5, but those data were pretty underwhelming.
Dr. Paul Offit says if the updated vaccine boosters targeting the newest Omicron variants are going to launch next month, there needs to be data showing that the person who gets the booster will have an immune response that's drastically better than what the committee members saw in June.
I think the American public is owed that.
If you're recommended to get a booster, you shouldn't wait for the upgraded ones.
You are better protected against mild illness if you presumably get a BA4, BA5 vaccine. But again, you need to prove it before you launch that kind of program. And right now, we're still waiting for that proof.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, a top official of the Trump Organization agrees to testify against the company as part of a plea deal. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Most of us know that it's the happiest place on earth, but at what cost? Disneyland is raising its prices on its Magic Key annual pass renewal. Depending on the pass that you have, it could cost you between $50 and $200 more. The Magic Key came out last year after guests were found to wait up to 8 hours just to get a daily ticket to the park. The special pass gives free or discounted parking and dining, as well as the perk to skip lines. Digital Gym Cinema may be small, but it's trying to bring as many independent films to San Diego as it can fit into its 56-seat venue. KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando says you have 3 new films to choose from this Friday at the Micro Cinema in East Village.
As someone who's currently consumed by fostering a very large puppy, I confess that I have zero objectivity in reviewing the new documentary, Free Puppies. The film focuses on a group of women dedicated to rescuing dogs.
Here in the South, it's really sad.
People drop dogs off here all the time.
The documentary looks specifically to the challenges these women face rescuing dogs in the southern U.S., where there's a serious overpopulation problem and lack of shelters. There's nothing groundbreaking in terms of the filmmaking here, but it's a heartfelt work that's trying to make a difference.
And I hope and I pray that I'm doing the most that I can and being the most effective that I can be.
If you don't want to foster a dog after this film, then I might have to send John Wick after you. But if you are looking for something more complex and artfully rendered, Digital Gym Cinema also has you covered. Costa Brava, Lebanon is set in what the film calls Lebanon in a near future. The Baudry family is living off the grid and far from stressful city life with its daily protests. But all that is about to change as a landfill literally starts dumping trash on their idyllic doorstep. I wish I knew more about Lebanese politics and culture because I feel I would see more layers in this allegorical tale. Nonetheless, there are clear universal themes to be found about corrupt governments and lying politicians, as well as how people react to a homeland that they love but are also critical of. The film succeeds best in depicting intimate family dynamics. We come to see the landfill as not just a metaphor for a rotting political system, but also for relationships that are decaying as family members reveal different ways of reacting to the world around them. It marks a promising feature directing debut of actress Monia Akil. And the final film opening at Digital Gem Cinema this week is Spin Me Round, a romantic comedy set against the backdrop of the restaurant world.
You're gonna fall in love.
Okay, I was kind of thinking that too. I know an innocuous romantic comedy should not stir such ire in me, but Spin Me Round represents so much of what I hate in movies.
This program sucks. Lighten up a little bit, please.
It's a paint-by-numbers script with token people of color, character types rather than multidimensional characters, and a blandly ridiculous plot that drags on for almost 2 hours.
What is this, Clue? He's killing Colonel Mustard with the lead pipe?
There's no one, except the wasted Aubrey Plaza, that I would ever want to spend time with. It was a chore just to make it through to the inane conclusion. Spin Me Round is exactly why I programmed a series of Ernst Lubitsch romantic comedies for the Athenaeum's Flicks on the Bricks outdoor summer movie series.
Darling! Oh, now, darling, tell me all about yourself. Who are you?
Lubitsch does rom-coms right, giving us wit, sophistication, and sly, sexy humor. Trouble in Paradise is tonight at 8 p.m. And next Thursday, Garbo laughs in Ninotchka.
What's so funny about this?
Lubitsch is the perfect antidote to Spin Me Round. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. A series of children's books is finding new life on the stage and out in nature. On Morning Edition, how the adventures of Frog and Toad are continuing their legacy of learning. And summer is winding down, but there's still plenty to see and do this weekend. On Midday Edition, a roundup of all the best in arts and culture events. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.